Guys, a little crowd pleaser today, but useful for your friends who still don't quite get the obvious. So the psychology of masks, beyond sinister. And let's show some globalist evil. Let's expose it. So here's the thing that's doing the rounds on the internet from Lieutenant Colonel David Grossman in his book On Killing. So let's look at the quote, and he's entirely correct. During operative conditioning training soldiers, we have learned that if an enemy combatant looks different than the soldier, it's 40% easier for the soldier to not feel things like empathy, compassion, fear, etc. If the combatant has a face covering, it is 60% on average more difficult to connect with the person. This has nothing to do with killing training, it's just the way human brains work, as we know. So over a long period of time, example 1 to 5 years, mass will alter our ways of viewing each other in a biological sense. That's pretty evil, isn't it? My son's generation, if we all continue to use face coverings, will be 50% more prone to violence, 50% less empathetic, and it will dehumanize their peers by around 50%. Lieutenant Grossman is bang on, but this is the tip of the iceberg, guys. So let's bring you on a whirlwind tour of the actual science. May 2020, this paper came out and it pulled together 14 randomized control trials of masking measures, and basically no effect was seen, as we know, which agrees with the mechanistic realities. And we saw in Europe, astonishingly, there was 6 weeks of crowds building together right up to April 2020, and the numbers for the COVID thing kept collapsing. Clear as crystal seasonally. And then someone way up top, we never even found out who exactly brought in the mask mandates, but it was so high up, no one could even find out who it was. But by God, it rolled out. So they brought them in April when the problem had collapsed until the next winter. And of course, they had no effect, as the people who brought them in knew they could not have an effect even if they worked. But the people who gave the order also knew from the science that they didn't work anyway. So quite shocking. This was Germany. Austria saw the same. So the thing had collapsed, and some big guys up the top said, mask those little ant people. And here's where they did it. And of course, nothing happened. Nothing could ever happen. It was absurd. Poland was the same. Thing collapsed. Little ant people are not going to be in a panic about pandemia. Let's mask those little buggers and maybe take away their humanity as a bonus. So that was Poland. And of course, nothing happened. And the guys up top, and everyone really should have known that. This one was hilarious, from Justin Hart back in the day, and basically a study of US COVID-19 cases looking at counties with a population of over 100k, and of course, mask mandate versus no mandate, zero difference, as we would know from the real science. But the bad boys up top, they had different reasons for masks. And this famous one, North Dakota, masks, business restrictions, yada yada, pseudo lockdowns. South Dakota, smart governor, no masks, no restrictions, people in bars and everything. Zero difference. In fact, South Dakota with no measures was kind of a little bit better, if anything. So the guys up top knew this, but they were never putting them in for COVID. And Cochrane Collaboration, more recently, a couple of years ago, came out with their full meta-analysis on all of this stuff, masks, and the answer was, of course, that masks are junk science. And here you can see from the forest plots, you don't need to be a scientist, right? If all the bars are spread across the middle line here, it means there's no effect seen. So across the board with all the studies, nothing seen. Masks are junk science. And here we have N95s versus the paper nonsense. No difference seen. Junk science for N95s as well. And here's in healthcare workers, viral illness, different outcome. Same thing. Always masks are junk science. Obviously. But the boys up top, they knew this. But they needed masks on the little ant people because it was all about political control. And no excuses that last Cochrane analysis came out after the mask mandates. Came out in 23, I think. But in 2011, they had done their original systematic review. And it showed as well that masks were junk science. So their first one showed it. And 2020, they updated it completely with loads of extra studies. And, surprise, surprise, it said masks are junk science for coronavirus and flus. 2021, the Danish mask trial. Guess what it said? Well, it said the masks are Junk science, at best. And I'm going to finish with this. Ireland's very accurately recorded figures. You can freeze screen if you want, but broadly speaking, for the whole under 70s group, there was, in the peak year, a 1 in 7,500 risk, right? Which is around the general risk of death from poisoning. I grabbed some American risk tables. Under 50s as a group, 1 in 50,000 risk, right? Which is around the risk of death from fire or smoke. And under 25s, they wouldn't tell us how many died, probably 0, but they said less than 5, right? So in those demographics, it was 1 in 500,000 risk. Yeah, quarter the risk of falling down stairs or ladders. This is the real data, guys. And those deaths were PCR positives. So a huge amount of them were not really valid. So the risk for a healthy person genuinely dying of the COVID flu was just infinitesimally small. It was meaningless. So why the masks then? Well, it's clear as crystal. In the summer of 2020, seasonally, we knew that the COVID thing was going to collapse. No fear porn, no death porn, no ICU porn, not even really much case porn. And that became a major problem when you had to keep a sense of pandemia going until the magic sauce mRNA came out, because that was the whole point of the whole COVID program. So way up the top, there was panic when the thing collapsed, because you're never going to get the people back. After a long summer of forgetting about COVID flu, you're never going to get them back later that year to try and take a magic potion injection, right? So the panic up the top led to some pretty smart thinking. Guys, we got to mask all these idiots. We got to mask all these ant people. And we got to bring in prison sentences and fines in the summer of 2020 when no COVID flu is going on. We'll have to bring in prison sentences and fines to make sure the ant people actually comply. Because many of the ant people will, in fairness, be smart enough to say, hey, why are we masking up in the middle of the summer when nothing's going on? So we're going to have to bring it in with iron in the glove. And they did. So like I say, the most fascinating thing is myself and my massive worldwide network, back in 2020, we made some efforts, but we could not even find out who, way up in the clouds, had thought this one up. So that just shows you how high up the ladder this came from. And we know it's simply globalist evil exposed. Well, folks, that'll do it. And if you want to get a 2.5 to 3 hour full workshop on critical thinking and be able to work all this stuff out as it's happening and not later on, like we did back in 2020, we were on it from the get-go. So critical thinking, full 2.5 hour workshop with Q&A and worked examples, and you'll put yourself way ahead of the posse. I also do mental strength using the best psychology. Again, a 2.5 to 3 hour interactive workshop on all the best tools and takeaways to make your mind like steel. Deal with stress, deal with all of life's problems way, way better. So I'm quite passionate about this science. But the key thing is the tips you take away, the templates, you can start working on it the moment the workshop is finished. So this is all about practical solutions for people, not some airy-fairy course thing. And Weight Loss Masterclass, it's on tomorrow, Thursday, is the next live session, 17th of April. These others are Critical Thinking on the 24th of April and then 1st of May for the Resilient Mind Mental Strength Workshop. But I'm going to keep running them on a rolling basis, and you'll always see on ivorcumminsworkshops.com. You will see the next date for each of the workshops will always be updated, so you know when the next one is going to be, should you wish to order and engage with us all in self-improvement at a much higher level. Thank you.